Neil Hamilton.
The First Minister's opening speech was full of unconscious humour, and it did at least have the good grace, I think, to chuckle whilst he was talking about it being unfair, wrong and corrosive, this deal, as though it would be any different if it was Labour that had the larger number of seats and was doing a similar kind of deal with the DUP. I'm old enough to remember, I'm not sure whether it was Lynn Eagle or Ken Skates pointed out earlier in the day, what politics was like in the 1970s. And I remember the negotiations between the Wilson governments and the Callaghan governments with Northern Irish members. And I remember the day when the Labour government was brought down by Frank Maguire coming over and being plied with drink in the Strangers' Bar, only then to abstain in person so that the government lost a vote of no confidence. So this is power politics. We've seen it all before, and no doubt we'll see it again. And I congratulate the DUP on the deal that they've done with the government. In fact, they're such good negotiators, I think they should be in charge of the Brexit negotiations on behalf of the United Kingdom. But for the First Minister to complain about this in an extended display of sour grapes, I think is quite right. I give way to David.
I'm grateful to him for making the reference to the 70s, because I also remember this period extremely well. I was in the bar the very night when two Irish colleagues, Jerry Fitt and Frank Maguire, arrived to abstain in person. But the difference surely is this, that in this case, this deal is being made with a massive subvention, totally outwith the normal constitutional financial arrangements, totally outwith the Barnett formula. The deals that were made between Labour and ourselves and other parties in the times of Wilson and Callaghan were deals that were made openly on a limited scale. They weren't intended to prop up a government for 5 years.
Well, the DUP are obviously better negotiators than their counterparts in those days. We have to remember the Barnett formula itself, of course, is a product of those negotiations, something which is inherently unfair to Wales, quite regardless of these negotiations, because on a per capita basis, of course, Wales, as the leader of Plaid Cymru very rightly pointed out, gets a very raw deal indeed. But why are they not entering into negotiations with the United Kingdom government to get a better deal for Wales? They're in opposition to the government, as indeed are the DUP, technically, and they could be doing the deal to get exactly what she claims to have wanted on behalf of the people of Wales. But because of her bigoted and blinkered refusal even to contemplate talking to, let alone negotiating with, a Conservative government, she denies the people of Wales the benefits that she claims to want. And therefore, that speech was pure humbug and hypocrisy, because she does have power through her 4 members of Parliament at Westminster to influence the negotiating process, because the government only has a bare majority anyway with the votes of the DUP. So if she really wants to say, for example, the Circuit of Wales project, we could make a change to the accounting conventions, which appear to be the only reason that the deal has been scuppered by the Welsh Government, in exchange for their votes. Why doesn't she do that? Answer comes there now.
Does it agree with me that if Plaid Cymru had done a deal with the Conservative government, it would give them 322 seats, and excluding Sinn Féin, that would be an overall majority? We've got quite some things for Wales with that, couldn't we?
Indeed. Well, for once my former colleague talks sense. As he always used to. But that is exactly the matter. We're in the era of power politics. There's no good complaining about unfairness. Life is unfair, as we know. Goodness knows I've been on the receiving end of so much unfairness in the course of my life. And I make no complaint about that, of course. I must be a masochist to be in politics and at my age. But nevertheless, the DUP have done what they were elected to do, get the best deal for Northern Ireland. What is Plaid Cymru doing? They've been elected to get the best deal for Wales, but they've utterly failed to take up the opportunity. In fact, the Welsh Labour Party in the last general election did as much as it possibly could to pretend they were no part of the Labour Party nationally and that Jeremy Corbyn didn't exist. Why don't they use the independence which they sought to persuade the Welsh people that they had from Labour nationally to do a deal with Theresa May themselves. They could transform British politics by breaking away from the Labour Party nationally and doing what they claim to want also, a deal in the interest of the people of Wales. So I'm afraid, although I very much welcome the opportunity for us to debate this matter today, the debate is actually just an exercise in humbug, hypocrisy and sour grapes. Theresa May did get the largest number of seats. The DUP are prepared to do a deal. They've got a deal. Yes, we are the losers, but who's responsible for that? Not them, but Plaid Cymru, the Labour Party, and their little helper from Brecon and Radnor.